Welcome to the Lessons from the Leap podcast, where we showcase visionary entrepreneurs and leaders, sharing their incredible journeys and inspiring stories. Let's dive into the show.
Hello and welcome to Lessons from the Leap. I'm your host, Gazanfer Mansoor. On this show, I get to sit down with entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders, technical leaders, talk about bold decisions, pivotal moments, and innovative ideas that shaped their journey. This episode is brought to you by Technology Rivers. At Technology Rivers, we bring innovation through technology and AI to solve real-world industry problems. If you'd like to learn more about us, head over to technologyrivers.com and tell us more about your project. Today, we have Dr. Swati Tyagi, an AI and machine learning professional with experience across research and industry with us. Dr. Swati, can you introduce yourself? Tell us more about your journey. What are you currently working on? This is your time to introduce yourself. Tell anything that you want our audience to know about you. And then we'll dig deeper into
your
Thank
you, Mr. Mansoor, for having me. It's wonderful to be here, and I really appreciate you starting with my introduction. So I have done PhD in financial service analytics with focus in AI, ML, and Gen AI. And I will talk more about my research and how I started my PhD journey. But the thing is, before that, I did master's from IIT Delhi and bachelor's in computer science and engineering from back in India. So if I give some highlight about my personal side to begin with, I was born and raised in India in a family of daughter. And I say that deliberately because in many parts of India, even today, being born a girl comes with a different set of expectation. There is often this unspoken pressure to keep your ambition modest to fit into certain role and not to ask for too much. But my parents didn't believe in that narrative. Not for a second. They fought sometime quietly and sometime even visibly to make sure that their daughter had access to education, opportunity, and to the belief that we could be anything we wanted. And especially my mother, she taught us that circumstances don't define capability. That shaped everything how we see the world. Now coming to when I came to United States for my PhD, I experienced something transformative. In the intellectual freedom that I got here, that's something phenomenal. Here, ideas matter more than the background. Questions were encouraged, not suppressed. The environment allowed me to dream bigger, ask harder questions, and ultimately pursue research focused on AI system, machine learning that actually serve people and not just, impressed by using the fancy terminologies.
Awesome. Welcome to the American dream. That's what you come here for. So thanks for sharing that. So your career spans research, enterprise AI, leadership roles. So what initially drew you to AI? And what were the key moments that shaped your journey from research to large-scale deployment?
So when I started early in my career, when I was working as software engineer, then when I did my bachelor's in computer science, I started my career as a software engineer. Then with time, I see that I need to do like master's in business administration and technology management to grow up in the ladder. And then I worked in a strategy, planning, analytics domain and work on various analytics projects. During that time, I realized that I enjoy the analytics thing and I need to dig in deeper. And I did my research that AI was going, there was a boom, like data scientist boom. Now it's a clear boom, but even 6 years back, data scientists were really respected for the work they used to do. And then I made up my mind that I need to dig deeper into this. And I decided to pursue either master's or PhD. I applied to couple of universities based on my interest. I was not applying just normal like pure computer science or pure MBA thing. I was looking something intersectional, which gives me to work on real problems that I can solve. And I will talk more about it. But from there onwards, I applied and I got into University of Delaware, which in their PhD program, which is financial service analytics. And it gave me the platform to work on various kind of problem like credit risk modeling. It gave me the problem to work on redlining data and to see that there are hidden biases based on the zip code. And then finally, I worked on natural language processing to understand how word embedding works and how the association and biases work internally in the latent connections.
Cool. So you talked about biasness. So biasness, hallucination, these are the common terminologies we keep hearing
Yeah.
in AI. So how do you resolve that? Let's talk one at a time. So let's talk first about hallucination, which is very common. Like you ask anything to ChatGPT, they'll always answer,
Yeah.
even if ChatGPT doesn't know. That's one
Right.
of those ideal people
Right.
who always appreciate you and give you answer even if it's wrong. But obviously that creates a much bigger. So tell our audience, what is hallucination? Why does that happen? And what can we do, or what the companies who are building the solutions can do to reduce that hallucination problem? I know I
Uh,
combine all three question one.
right. So these days we heard the term like LLM, Gen AI, but let me explain the basis of the LLM. LLM, basically the large language model, they are trained on billions of parameter, and by billion of parameter, I say that they are trained on large internet data that's available to us. And you can imagine that how much data the internet has. So these models are trained on such huge data, and they are probabilistic in nature. They are made to answer you with such confidence. So what exactly hallucination is? Hallucination happen when these large language model, for example chat gpt, generate information that has no grounding in its source data or in reality. It is not making a mistake based on incomplete information, it is creating information that really does not exist. So for example, in healthcare, imagine a patient ask an AI powered health assistant about their medication, and the model might generate morphine should be taken with grapefruit juice to enhance absorption. That sounds plausible. It's grammatically correct, and even those who do not know anything like from medical background, they may take it right. It has the structure of medical advice, but it is completely fabricated and potentially dangerous. So the two, when we talk about like financial services or healthcare, these are really critical sectors. We cannot just use the chat gpt api and build an agentic framework and just deploy it on the production for the patient to use, or for normal like bank customers to use it, because then there will be consequences of it. So we need to build various guardrails with comprehensive evaluation framework to mitigate those challenges before going to production. There are a lot of layers that we need to take care of, and I can walk you over through one by one. We need to understand first the data. The data is most important thing. For example, these agents, the agentic framework, when we talk about, we need to understand a problem. We should not try to fit. Chat gpt is something like for customer, it's c to c, like you and I try anything and we type a query and it answers it. But when we say we are building an enterprise level solution, we need to think of a way that it is sounds, it does not give us the fabricated information. So our problem starts with small. Always start with a small problem, try to solve it, create a lot of synthetic data, lot of actual data to test it, and there are frameworks for that. So yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing these. So now the next part is the bias.
Yeah.
So AIs have a lot of inherent bias in that. So can you talk about that? How do you identify? How do you resolve that?
Yeah.
And that's your area, so feel free to talk as much as you want on this topic.
Yeah, thank you. So let me use an analogy for it that will resonate with professional in both healthcare and financial services field. Imagine bias as embedded in the foundation of a building. What most people see is the visible structure, the output, the recommendation, the decision. When we find biased output, we can patch them. We can add filter, adjust threshold, post processing result. But bias happen when the model is trained. So for example, there is a lot of internet data. I told that these models are trained on internet data. But do you think that all the section of the community are represented equally on the internet? Based on the history has not represented everybody equally. There are some segments that are represented highly, some segments are not represented that highly. For example, women scientists, there are less number of women scientists and many number of male scientists, for example. And if we give that data to the model, and model will say that there is a high probability of a man to be a scientist than a woman, which is, when you use these systems everywhere, when we talk about Gen AI is going to change the world, there will be AGI. And when we are building these bias systems, their decision will be biased based on the data they are trained or they have seen it. For example, if you build a recruitment agency and you are using automated AI system to filter the resumes, and somebody applied for a position of a doctor, and in a word embedding, doctor is more closer in the latent space, which is not visible to us, but there is a word embedding vector representation of the text. So in the latent space, the word doctor is more closer to the gender men as compared to the women. So when a woman or a man both apply for the same position of a senior resident doctor, whose resume will get picked? Do you know whose? It will be the male resume that will picked. Same goes the demographics, same goes the racial thing. So there's so many type of bias and where we need to work. It could be the age related bias, it could be the gender related bias, it could be the race related bias, it could be the demographic, and any other bias where the data is not equal and the models are not trained on the equal data. So that can leads to the biasing. So it's that bias exists, how the model represent concept internally. For example, during my PhD, I did the research on the redlining data on the zip codes, that there is a high probability of the people living in a particular zip code to get rejected, like they will default more. The model predicts like these people, those who are living in a particular zip code, they tend to reject more as compared to the others. So if I belong to a particular zip code which was not clearly actually trained in a good way in the model, and I'm highly educated, and if I live in that zip code, there is a high chance that my application will get rejected. So these bias and fairness do not get reflected to the normal people. But if Gen AI system and all this system will be everywhere, then we need to think twice, not just the accuracy, but these hidden patterns that these models are trained on.
On the same note, I do know like how in the general world, in the hacking world, or in there are different wrong information is presented for the other side's benefit.
Yeah.
Obviously, it goes into the biasness as well. So
Right.
whether it's certain groups are talking more about like allopathic against the homeopathic, or the medicine versus natural. So I mean, a lot of those things. So as you're getting this data, like a lot of people are probably feeding that bad data. In some cases, maybe crossing the boundaries, but may not necessarily be those. And that's creating those bias because LLMs are being trained on that data.
Yeah.
What could be done to avoid that? Is that a regulation thing? Is that the government involvement thing? Is that as organizations companies should do? Is it at the individual level? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think you have correctly pointed out. Sometimes it's not just the data, sometimes people inject the wrong data in a way that when we say it like a prompt injection or a model injection, they want to manipulate the data. And there should be the regulations for these kind of actions. For example, recently there is a news give some person how to make a chemical formula and something which is not supposed to be shared with a teen. So we need to share when we deploy these model in a production. It's very important for us to tightly scope how these model answer and how these model predict it, because sometimes the Gen AI model, the large language model, they answer something out of the scope. They do not need to, or they are not supposed to do that. So tightly scoping by giving the negative prompts like what they are not supposed to do it, that could be done. Making the guidelines and the regulation, if the model are not following a particular guideline, For example, HIPAA guidelines we have. You cannot use actually the customer information, you cannot store it. And if you are using it as per the HIPAA guideline, then there are different aspects of that. There are different kind of a guideline also, like in US, we have a guideline that we cannot use age, zip code now, and other various like name of the person and the race of the person to make credit risk models, because these are the personal information and one should not introduce those things into the model that can induce the biases. The models are built on the feature. So when you are deciding that this is a problem you are trying to solve, for example, the insurance problem you're trying to solve, or prior authorization problem you are trying to solve, or credit risk modeling problem you're trying to solve, for example, you pick the features, like, so you need to eliminate those features that can introduce the bias. That's the first thing, as a guideline or as a regulatory compliance, that to be done. So there is a model governance team in enterprise setting, especially in finance and healthcare. Based on my experience, they do not allow the model to go in production without reviewing it completely, that it is biased free and that it is fair for all the section of the people. And how it introduced, you cannot use the gender, you cannot use the age, you cannot use the zip code, you cannot use the name and other personal identifier like PII information that can induce the biasness in the model. You need to remove that. And then a complete simulation and back testing is done to understand that how the model is performing. That as part of the compliance these teams have to do, the data scientist team have to do. And now when I talk about the gen ai also needs to follow the same thing. The misconception in the industry is like, you just use the API of ChatGPT, Claude, or something, build some agentic framework and just deploy it. No, the Gen AI models also need to go through the same cycle, filtering the data, PII reduction, applying all the guardrails necessary, securing your data, and then time to time, like in traditional model, we do drift check or model performance check, how the model is performing, if the model is giving the correct output or not. Same with the Gen AI, we have to do weekly, monthly, and quarterly checkups, how these systems are performing, if they are performing within the scope, if not, then what's the reason, and completely try to mitigate, like as soon as we get to know, okay, this particular model is going out of the scope, is not fair, or through the prompt injection like you pointed out, then we need to, it's an enterprise, actually it's an enterprise level duty, because there are countries that have made it country level regulation, but I feel that it should be the duty of every person, every data scientist, AI/ML engineer, or the enterprise, those who are developing those models and deploying it. It should also be the responsibility of those people to make it fairer and bias free and within the scope, so that it does not induce the wrong output.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So you build system that involves obviously LLMs, RAG, AI agents. How do you decide when these advanced technologies are truly necessary versus over engineering? Because we see that very common, like where the companies are being pitched, okay, that we will use this one, but is it really necessary?
So these days, it's something, it's very interesting is happening. Like everybody wants to fit all the problem in Gen AI. Like they want to just join this race of Gen AI and want to solve all the problem through the Gen AI, which it sounds good and appealing, but we know Gen AI is not good in solving all the problem. It is good in unstructured data because it's trained on billions of tokens, and it is very good in identifying the pattern, whether it could be question answering, summarizing, document extraction, and all of that, which is very good. Even sentiment analysis, intent detection, normal chatbot and conversational system, they are very good and efficient as compared to the older version that were trained on spacey or Dialogflow and something. But when it comes to the structured data, whether it comes to the forecasting, whether it comes to the Markov chain models, whether it comes to the propensity model or the risk model or underwriting model, they are not that great in that, like, or causal models, they're different kind of a models, right? They needs to be solved through the traditional data science knowledge. And that's why it's very important these days to hire right set of people. Those who just don't know the Gen AI, like some people know only Gen AI in this race, and they try to fit in everything. We need the people, those who have the understanding of both the aspects, both the pillar, the traditional and the Gen AI vertical, and then they can make a decision like the strategy. We need the people, those who know the strategy and break down the complex problem into the simpler problem. And there could be, like, in one part of that problem it could be the traditional, and in one part it could be the Gen AI, and it could be a mix of both, like we can call the traditional model from the chatbot also. So we can combine both the things. So these days the important has become in the expert, those who know both the verticals and they know how the both can work together. And also it's not just the chatbot, it's something, the workflow that matters. The workflow has different stages. For example, the one stage is predicting if this customer will default or not. The second stage is the processing the document. In that stage of the workflow will comes the Gen AI. In the third stage will come something, the underwriting aspect, then traditional will come. And in the fourth will be like summarizing the overall summary, where the Gen AI thing will come. So it is kind of a workflow automation, but with the help of both traditional and Gen AI aspects.
Yeah, even in the Gen AI, so a lot of people obviously just assume that the chat GPT is AI, but just uploading your content doesn't mean. So once you have a lot of that data, how do you train that? How do you use that? That's where you said, as you said, it's a combination of those things.
Yeah.
Somehow there's a lot of misconception about the AI that, oh, it will just give you always perfect result by just giving you two documents. But
Yeah.
then once you start digging deeper, you realize it's way more than that.
Yeah.
Right. So many organizations struggle to move from AI experiments to production.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your experience? What are the biggest blocker and what actually works?
Actually, based on my experience, what I figured out, there are different kind of skills are required at different stages. So although we have a team that is good in research and doing the experimentation, we don't have the understanding how to deploy it, like on AWS, Azure, or GCP. So we need those set of people, like we divide the data scientist team and the ML ops team. That's why there is a proper segregation. And now comes the AI ML engineer role. So when we say that Gen AI will going to, diminish the number of jobs, or it will replace, yes, it is replacing, but we need more people of the right set of skills. So why the companies are not able to move from experiment or POC stage to the production, the number one could be the lack of understanding how to scale it, how to deploy it, whether to use ECS Fargate, whether to use serverless Lambda, or how to do the observability, whether to use Langsmith or other telemetry, how to evaluate it, whether to use MLflow or any other scripting that we can use. So there are right set of peoples that are required for it to scale from POC to the production, and it takes a lot of effort. And that's why many companies are not able to move it from there. And the other thing is, maybe they found that this problem is interesting to solve through Gen AI, and they did it, but at the POC stage they found that it's very difficult to basically put all the guardrails or to evaluate everything at the POC level. We should not put so much effort going to production because they are not finding enough value, or the person who is building it and experimenting it not able to actually convey the right value to the higher management people, the leadership, that how this particular Gen AI thing or a traditional model or any other thing will able to solve the problem, and what ROI we are getting. That is very important. So there are two aspects of that.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. So we were talking about LLMs. So there are many LLMs, many models, OpenAI, Anthropic, Claude, Grok, Perplexity. We'll talk few. How do I decide which one to go with? It's confusing. There are so many options available now.
Yeah. Every LLM has its own unique selling point. When you start using them, you can see the complete differentiation. So, for example, ChatGPT is very good in summarizing or in creating essays, email, or something like that. That's something probabilistic you want to generate more and more. But Claude is really good in code. So, if you want to write a very good code, and you can rely on Claude, which is giving at most like 95% and sometimes even 100% correct. So Claude is good in coding. ChatGPT is good in your day-to-day activities, your email writing, essay writing, and giving you the summarization. Perplexity is good in deep research. If you are from academic, you are a researcher and you want to like read a paper quickly, want to, segregate the points, then Perplexity is very good. And now comes the Gemini. Gemini is having mix of all, I would rather say. It is having the image generation capability also, Nano Banana it has, then it has code generation capability. But in code, I would say that a Claude is better than Gemini. And now even ChatGPT has catch up Gemini in terms of the image generation. Earlier, Nano Banana was there and Gemini created hype. But nowadays, I'm using ChatGPT also, and it is also creating equally good images. So, yeah, one can use either Gemini or ChatGPT. That's their call.
Okay. You've said before that AI without evaluation is a blind trust. Can you unpack that?
Yeah.
Especially for people in healthcare.
Yes. So when we talk about the high stake domains like finance and healthcare, factual accuracy matters a lot first. It's not like how well grammatically these solutions have produces, but how factually they are correct. So when we talk about like traditional model, we had test data, validation data, training data. So what happened in Gen AI, we don't have the training data if until and unless we are doing fine tuning or we are using open source model like Llama, then we have our own data. We can fine tune these models and ask them how to behave. That is also very efficient. There are different techniques, Clora, LoRa, the different techniques in the market that could be used. However, if you are just using the API part, we are not actually building a gold data set, validation set and test set that's required before going to production or at a UAT stage. That's required, that is must. The second thing is hallucination detection. How often we are checking or frameworks we have to detect the fabrication. What measures we are we doing a LLM deterministic programming or we are doing LLM stochastic programming. So there are different differences in that. Are we setting the temperature zero? Are we setting the guardrails? No, not only at the query stage when somebody is asking, but also at the output stage, that the answer it is giving is correct and it's in the database. And that's why RAG come into the picture, and now graph RAG has come into the picture, because RAG is retrieval augmented generation that's giving you an augment layer on the top of these chat gpt or any other LLM systems. You can feed in your external data, which is your enterprise data. That could be done. And the second is, nowadays I would rather suggest in just going with the traditional RAG, which is a plain RAG, go with the graph RAG architecture, because graph are very good in identifying the entities, nodes, and the patterns, and they are able to retrieve fast and give you the correct information. So you can mitigate the hallucination from, for example, if your hallucination is like 80% or 20-30%, you can mitigate it to 1 or 2% with the graph RAG. So these are the techniques, like knowledge graphs could be used. And then bias assessment, you can train some small language model to detect the specific biases, what the system is not supposed to do, and test it against that. That could be done. Then regex pattern, numerical accuracy, unit testing could be done. And there are some compliance, regulatory compliance checks that are required. You need to do the unit testing and deterministic programming for that. So there are different layers that could be put before deploying the system to the production.
So, what advice would you give to young professionals, especially women, who are entering AI in healthcare or financial, any of it? Any advice for those people?
First of all, I would say that your voice matters, your dreams matters. Do not just think like if somebody say that what will you do if you are just doing PhD or you are going outside your country at the age of 30, 35. Do not listen to them. Always listen what's your strength is and what your expertise is, and you can make your career at any age. That's what I want to say. And the second is, don't assume your question are too basic or your ideas are too unconventional. The industry need diverse perspective, and that's how these models, the AI system, when they have the diverse perspective, they can have and build those models from diverse angle. The second is build bridges, connect technology with those who are coming in healthcare domain, with clinical practices, with compliance. Just don't think from tech perspective, pure tech perspective. Always try to build your expertise around a domain, because nowadays when code could be automated, or there are a lot of work that could be automated, that skill, the new skill that you need to learn is your domain. Whether you come from legal domain, whether you come from health domain, finance domain, be expert in that and then add the technology layer on the top of that. That one thing. And the third is stay curious. The field is evolving faster than that we imagine. So be a lifelong learner, embrace uncertainty, and always be a curious child, just to go and research more and more, because I think learning is the only constant thing that we should appreciate in our life.
Wow, that's a very powerful answer, a very powerful advice. Yeah, and no question is the basic question. So it's more important to have the question. People who ask questions are a lot more visible and appreciated than the people who are not asking questions. So what is the most innovative AI technology that you found? I mean, like among all of these, like new, there's so much coming nowadays. Is there one thing that you really loved lately that was mind blowing?
These days, actually, I admire how knowledge graph works, how these I have worked with Cigna also. 2 3 years back, I did work as a data scientist with them, and they were trying to solve a very easy problem like unstructured data they were working. But it was very difficult when we apply these large language model directly on that data to summarize it, because they have like pharmacies, they have customers, they have zip code, and they wanted, and the doctors, and they wanted to create a crisp summarization of the customer feedback with respect to a particular doctor, the pharmacy. Like the customer have issue with the pharmacy or with the doctor or with their website or with the mobile app or any other like issues. So the graph, when I fit the whole data into the graph structure, and when I ran these large language model or any other algorithm on the top of that, the results were really amazing. So this knowledge graph and the graph architecture really amazed me how it worked. And the second thing that these days is amazing me, that the mathematics that we read in our high school or secondary high school, even at bachelor's like engineering, is something evolving. Now I can see, and I can see how things are evolving, and I can connect the dots, that the differential equation, integral, linear algebra that I read during my young age, I can see how I'm now using in real time algorithms and practical way.
Thank you. One last question before we wrap up. If people want to learn more about your work or explore responsible AI,
Mhm.
where should they start?
So, responsible AI matters not just in technology, but in any industry that you serve on. So, they can look my LLM evaluation toolkit, which is an open source project I created. And they're open to contribute it because it's an open source project. And I would love to have the diverse thoughts and aspects like how can we make it more comprehensive. Please do welcome. And when we think of responsible AI, just don't think of like bias or fairness. There's more to it. Responsible AI is how to make a system more robust, not in terms of just bias and fairness, but in terms of security also. Like Mr. Mansoor have mentioned, that it could be prompt injection, or it could be different kind of issues that could happen. And then there are different production issues. Always think responsible AI in a holistic way, in a comprehensive way. And it could be either in the software development, if you are a software developer, or it could be in the AI ML systems if you are data scientist or AI ML engineer. So you can connect me with on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to answer other queries also regarding it.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Swati. This has been a great conversation. Thank you for sharing your insights and experience with us. We really appreciate you joining us on Lessons from the Leap. Before we wrap up, is there any final word, and where can our audience connect with you? Is LinkedIn the only option, or do you have any website? Anything you want to share, we'll put it on our podcast information as well.
Yeah, I will share my email ID. I will share the LinkedIn. You can reach out me there. The last word I would say is stay hungry, stay curious, and stay foolish. So these are the three words I basically say. Be a lifelong learner. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lessons from the Leap podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'll catch you next time.